Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in with us, for those that have tuned in today, and for the gallery members that are here today for our November 25th regular council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. and I ask my council if they have any added items at this time. I would like to also note Councillor Daly will not be attending this meeting today. He is away. And we have no added items. I'd like an adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that the regular and closed council meeting agenda for Monday, November 25th, 2024 at 1 p.m. be accepted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. And I am going to be looking for consent, please, for the regular council meeting minutes of November 12th. Do we have consent? Thank you very much. The regular council meeting minutes of November 12th have full consent. Moving down to item 3, delegations and presentations. Page 9 of your agenda, please. We have item 3A, Delegation Olds Municipal Library 2025 Proposed Budget. Who's introducing the library? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And without further ado, we have Shauna and Leslie here from the Olds Municipal Library, and I'll invite one or both of them up to lead us through the presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. It gives me great pleasure to present on behalf of the Olds Municipal Library Board. My name is Shauna Savrani, and I am the chair of the board. Today we are talking to you about our budget proposal. The public library is an amazing place to be because of your investment. As you know, this is a time where we have a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and the library and its staff are a great way to support residents to ensure that they're able to navigate this world that we live in. It's also a space where people of marginalized communities can find a safe space. That includes people like immigrants, people with socioeconomic barriers, and those that face discrimination. The library, I don't know about you, but sometimes I need to have a nice, quiet, safe place to go, and our public library is still one of those places that you can go and still just be there for free. So that is a great place to help our health and well-being, as well as the fact that our library helps us create an educated community, from reading programs for littles to make sure that they read lots of books before they're even in school, up to seniors who can participate in things, learning things about computers and stuff like that. So we have 3 main funding sources. Of course, it is a public library, so we have government contributions. We also have other grants and community funding that we look forward to, and we do a little bit of fundraising and have independent revenue sources as well. In our next few slides, we'll go into details about each of those things. So as far as government contributions go, we are hoping to get from the town of Olds $397,121. The county, we hope to receive $56,165, and from the province, we are hoping for $76,536. And as far as other grants and community funding go, we do get an allotment from the PRL, which is the, help me, Parkland Regional Library. So that's $14,221. And then we do try, Leslie works very hard and tries to scrounge up other grants, but you never know when you're going to get those and what it's going to be for, but we're thinking about $3,700 based on past history. And then as far as our fundraising and independent revenue, We do things like the Banff Mountain Film Festival and book sales and things like that. So we have some fundraising that we do, so that's about $10,500, as well as we do provide services for adults that people pay for, as well as fees like fines and stuff like that. And then for our expenses, everyone's expenses is going up, of course, and every business, every group, your human resources is always your number one expense, because you can't do your thing without your people. Materials and collections, of course, it's a library, so we need lots of digital software, books, things like that. We now have a library of things, which is very cool if you haven't checked it out. We also have our administration and programming expenses, of course, so you need supplies for that, fundraising supplies, things like that. And then maintenance, utilities and insurance. It's a building that requires heat, so yeah, we have those, those expenses as well. So breaking those four things down, we have human resources. So of course, salaries and benefits, requested contribution for that, we have $461,712, and other staff and volunteer expenses is about $5,300. And then as far as our materials and collections go, books, digital and physical, cost about $31,221, and other resources, so that's AV and our library of things, is about $9,100 for that. And then for administration and programming, about $21,000 for 951, and for program delivery $13,300. Okay. And then as far as our maintenance goes, the janitor and insurance is about $6,500. Utilities, fingers crossed, $29,400. Hopefully we don't see anything crazy expensive there this year. And capital purchases, about $1,000 for things like that. So overall, the requested increase that we are hoping to get from the town of $10,817 for 2025. And of course, our largest expense, as I mentioned, is definitely our staffing. And we really hope to take care of our very special people that work at the library. And so our overall expense increase is also $12,676, which is actually less than what we're asking for. So that's what we have there. I'm going to let Leslie tell you a little bit about where your dollars go.
I get to talk about the fun stuff. So, of course, with any library and investment, when we talk about budget, it's important for you guys to understand what you get for that, so what your return on your investment is. So first of all, we wanted to talk about some of those non-measurable things. Of course, community development is a big part of what libraries do. We have social interactions, civic engagement, and foster a sense of belonging in the community. We also help educational advancement by providing information. Of course, Shauna mentioned helping people navigate the misinformation and disinformation world that's out there right now. That's a big focus for us right now. Increasing literacy rates and improving academic performance. And of course, hopefully having an informed citizenry for things like elections that come up. Economic growth, libraries definitely help with that as well. We provide business information for entrepreneurs, job seekers, as well as small businesses. And cultural enrichment, we have a diverse number of programs and materials that help people celebrate their differences, as well as promote creativity, inspire innovation. And of course, we hope to improve people's quality of life and help them with feeling relaxed and entertained and have a sense of well-being. Of course, those are all subjective things, and it's hard for us to measure those things, but we do have some very measurable things that we can share with you as well. So based on our current numbers to date, we can project that in 2024, we will circulate about 101,000 items. That includes print materials, e-books, e-audiobooks, and our library of things. That's another record year for us. We go up every single year. Yeah, last year it was about 90,000, so it's another 10,000 items that we've circulated, and it just keeps going up every year. So people are definitely using the library. When you take the average value of the items in each of those collections, we save the community about $2.1 million by being able to borrow items instead of having to purchase all of those items themselves. Of course, programs is a big part of what we do as well, helping people with exam proctoring, technology assistance, reference questions. We have programs for adults, youth, and children. We have career help. We help with resumes and things like that as well. So all of those things, if you had to pay career counselors, for example, or pay for exams to be proctored at other institutions, we save the community about $263,000. And then, of course, our technology is very well used in our library as well. This year, it looks like we're going to have about 80,000 connections. That's Wi-Fi as well as computer use, people coming in and using our computer stations for savings of about $823,000 in the community. So that gives us a total savings in the community about $3.2 million. So when we look at our total overall investment, that includes your investment as well as the fundraising and grants that we are able to come. That's $571,000 invested in the library for 2024, which means that for every dollar that we invest, $5.69 goes back to the community for about a 469% return on investment, which I don't know about you, but I've invested and I've never gotten that. So it's always great to see. Of course, there's a few questions that I know you probably have, and we just thought we'd preemptively answer some of those questions. I know we were talking to Brent. He mentioned a few things that you guys might be interested in. So we will open it up for questions in just a second, but we just wanted to address a few things that we knew you were burning questions on your mind. So have there been any efforts to raise contributions from government funding, other government funding sources? So Province of Alberta in 2023 did give us an increase across the board for libraries. Our per capita went up, as well as each library got an increased base grant. So that advocacy comes through provincial strategies, the Alberta Library, our regional library systems across Alberta, as well as things like AUMA conventions where you guys go and vote on stuff like that. So that is kind of, we can't go to the province and directly ask for more money other than joining these initiatives and advocacy, which of course we do when we can. For county funding, our county funding is tied to the memorandum of agreement that you guys have with the county, so we don't go directly to them and ask for anything, but we are certainly willing to help with any advocacy efforts that you need as far as stats or presentations to help if that is a direction that you'd like to go. As far as how our library stacks up against other libraries of similar size in Alberta, if you look at these numbers are from 2021. There are not published numbers for any later than that yet, but as of 2021, you can compare us with Banff, Slave Lake, Greenview, MD, Lac La Biche, and Hinton as far as populations that are similar to ours. As far as local appropriation, you can see that we have the lowest local appropriation among those. Direct payments, that is our payment from our Parkland Regional Library system. So that's money that comes back to us because Parkland gives us the Rural Services Transfer Grant instead of keeping it for themselves. So our total local appropriations are about $364,000 in 2021. So in comparison, again, we are among the lowest as far as self-generated income and as a percentage of total revenue, we are at 4.4%. That's the last column there, which is amongst the highest in all the libraries. So we do try to do a good job of helping fund ourselves and raise as much money as we possibly can as well. But yeah, so that is a little bit of a breakdown for where we're at for that. So yeah, any other questions that you guys might have?
Thank you very much. It seemed very flowing. The numbers were interesting. Questions from council? Councillor Platts.
Thank you, and through you to Ms. Moody there. With your library of things, do you take any kind of a deposit or utilize anybody's credit card, say, to hold those things? Because I'm thinking, with the replacement, I'm sure would be 100% on the library, and if something happens, is anybody else take responsibility for that? And, because I know it is a good program, and I know people have used it. I was just curious about that.
Absolutely, great question. We do take a credit card number, and they have to sign an agreement if it's over $100. And so if that item is not brought back, then we will charge their credit card. That doesn't mean that people haven't tried or haven't actually succeeded at theft. That's definitely part of doing business, which is the same for any of our DVDs and materials. It's just those are more expensive items. Luckily, though, we have been able to fund our library things through grants. So we just received a grant from the Central Alberta Community Foundation of $5,000, which we will be putting aside and funding, so that money will come back into our budget next year to help fund our library of things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Sorry, that had a little technical issue. I'm just wondering, through you to Ms. Moody, could you tell me how many staff you have?
13.
Are they all full-time?
No, we have some that only work 6 hours a week. There are library pages. Janitor works 12 hours a week, and then I think we have 6 FTE.
So 6 full-time.
Full-time equivalent, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Go ahead, and then we'll go to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leslie, you mentioned that the province increased their funding on a per capita basis. And in the spreadsheet that you used our town's population of $9,100. That provincial allocation, is it based on that town population or your catchment area population?
It's based on our town's population. I don't know if that number matches exactly that number, because there's always question about which number they use exactly, Treasury branch versus population. And so, yeah. But yeah, it's the 9,100.
I wasn't too concerned about the exact number
Yeah.
of people, more
It
the
doesn't
idea
include
that
the
it's
county.
town or catchment area. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I have a few questions, I'll, one at a time, and also I'll intersperse them with a few comments. Thanks for your presentation, and thanks for the work that you and your staff do in the community. I know when I do some reading, there are people that believe that library and library services should be considered or deemed an essential service, particularly in rural communities. But just wondering, if I look back, like in 2022, Leslie, I think you appeared before this council and gave a presentation. How do you define the catchment area, or is it the same as it was then, which was basically, again, we talked like 9,000 people for the town, 3,000 odd for the county, which would then, if you did some of the math, say that the town's contributing about 75% of your expenses, and the county, even though they would represent about 26% of the catchment, are contributing somewhat less than that, I think about 10%. Does that kind of math and do those numbers still hold in today's world?
Yeah, the numbers, it's about 2,800 that is assigned to us by the county. It's not anything, like that's just assigned, the county decides what catchment area that is. And I think there's a map somewhere with which boundaries are assigned to what.
Are you finished your question, or?
I have another question, if I may, or unless somebody else.
Oh, Councillor Blatz
Okay,
and
that's-
Ryan, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you back to Ms. Moody. So with going back to a little bit further along what Councillor Wilson has said here, how do you determine whether those patrons are actually coming within our per se boundary? Because, I mean, we realize that many people come to Olds to do shopping, and such on a regular basis. So do we know that, that contribution by the county is actually accurate? And is there any way for you to determine the approximate area of the county residents that are utilizing our facility?
Unfortunately, there is no way for us to track that. We can get the numbers on county patrons because we do put that they are from Mountain View County. But a county patron from Sundry's catchment versus our catchment, it doesn't differentiate those.
Thank you for that.
I wish it did. Because we do get a lot more people than some of the other libraries, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Ms. Moody. Can you tell me what is the percentage of the overall budget that the salaries and benefits are?
I'm sorry, I don't know the exact percentage off the top of my head. I didn't figure that number out.
Well, I'm sure you can probably get it back to Director Lapointe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And through you to Leslie and Shauna. Can you talk a little bit about how the delivery of services has or is, is changing within the library? I have a reputation for liking performance measures and metrics and everything. I'm just thinking about hours that the library is open. Is there a trend and a move toward more e-version type materials? Are people going less and less to paper copies? Are you more program oriented? Can you just talk a little bit about the services that you're providing and how they're being impacted through the budget constraints?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, our circulation goes up every year. And we have about 30% of our circulation that is attributed to ebooks and e-audiobooks. So 70% of our stuff is physical items. And so that is still our biggest contributor to circulation and the community. The use of ebooks and e-audiobooks definitely goes up every year, and our budget is directly connected to what people are looking for. So we have slowly been kind of changing over the amount. So we have a certain amount that's allocated towards collections, and so what we spend on ebooks comes out of that amount, and we change that based on circulation figures going up. So the more we do that, or the more that changes, the more we will kind of adjust. One of the problems that we see budget-wise is that ebooks and e-audiobooks are not equivalent to what people would get at home, for example. So an ebook that would cost you or $12 to $25 would cost us $70 to $150 because of digital rights management. Our audiobooks cost about $180 each, and then those are good for either 26 checkouts or 12 months, and then we have to repurchase that item. So the more we want to spend, we try to spend more on ebooks and e-audiobooks, but that's such a small amount that we get to purchase every year. So that is something that libraries across Canada as well as the US are advocating for with publishers, because it's not really a fair increase that we've been seeing. Programs wise, again, we have a strategic plan, and our programming is directly connected to our strategic plan based on the focus groups that we did in the community. And so we try to make sure that we are recouping costs where we can, as well as staying barrier free for people like youth and children, so that they can attend the library educational opportunities at no cost. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's good. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
This is going to sound kind of strange. It's out there, I think. Giggles from the other side. It's normal for me. Town of Olds doesn't have a community center. And I feel that the library has taken on that role very well. You do a lot of community programming that a community center would normally do in a community that had both. And I'm all for getting you as much money as we can. And I'm not sure if administration has looked at the possibility of actually identifying you as a community center and a library, to open up different avenues of funding through the province. you're very good as a library understanding how the province can fund a library, how Parkland, all these other organizations can fund libraries. But would it be advantageous for us, or disadvantageous of us, if that's a word, to look at calling you both a library and a community center to try and attract funding from different government sources? Is that something we've ever looked at as a library board, as administration in the past, or is it something that we can look at the future to see, is it another stream of revenue generating or grant funding opportunities by sharing that role and just changing the name a little bit from what you identify as to what you actually are?
I think that's a great idea. We would definitely be open to exploring that with the town if there is a possibility. I know, just as an example, we have looked at other sources of funding from other levels of government this year. We successfully received the Community Adult Learning Program funding from Advanced Education. We share that with the other 5 libraries in the county, and so that has brought funding that has been able to increase our programs as well as augment some of our own staffing that we're already doing, some of the programs in a community. So it would be similar to that, I think, what you're talking about. So I haven't looked at recreational funding. I'm not as familiar with that.
I'm wondering if I could get some advice from our CAO as to a method or something that we can do or ask in a certain way to see if we could investigate that as an opportunity for the library to acquire more funding by identifying it as both a library and a community center.
Nothing comes to mind. I mean, if council wants, we can look into it further. If I had to shoot from the hip, the biggest issue is that the library is a municipal corporation for all intents and purposes, and things like CEPA funding or other nonprofit avenues for funding require kind of a Part 9 or charity status. And I can't see that changing no matter what we call it. But I don't have any better information than that right now. So if council wanted me to look further, then I would happily accept a motion, but no promises where it'll go.
I'd like to speak to Director Lapointe. Have you experienced anything in your circle?
I would echo Sia Williams' response. I would also say maybe the next step would be to look at other communities just to see if there is opportunities that they are pursuing. I'm not aware of any at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just want to get back to the budget again. So I'm just doing a little bit of math here on your funding sources, and I take it your funding sources would equal your expenditures, correct? So, because I know you do a zero balance on the bottom. So we're looking at a $580,000, 484. That's what I've got. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. And yeah, just, I do like talking about the budget numbers, and the library, like a lot of our areas, is challenged with finances and funding and everything. I think what's unsettling is, and you touched on it, I think from about 2015 to 2023, the provincial funding of the libraries was basically frozen. And then in 2023, they provided 10% to all the libraries in the province. There's no indexing to inflation. Based on your chart there's no increase for the future year. So certainly looking at alternate sources of funding is an option, but there doesn't seem to be much of a commitment to library funding. So I guess I'm saying that on behalf of the many people that are viewing us to advocate on behalf of the library to the provincial government in the form of letters or phone calls or whatever, to indicate how important and critical the libraries are. And my question is, if I may be allowed two, is one, so will you be taking this presentation, or have you been asked to give this presentation to the county? Because again, we've determined the county is roughly 26% of your catchment. They fund 10% of your budget. The town funds 75% and the province the rest. have you been asked, or are you able to take this to the county, or do they need to make that request to you?
They usually need to request us to come, but I know that they're always open if we do want to go. We haven't been asked to do any budget presentation because, again, they discuss it as part of what they're doing as the memorandum of agreement. So when they ask us to come, it's usually more for informational purposes of what we're doing as the library, not budgetary. But as I said, if you guys want to try and advocate for that, we're more than welcome to be part of that process.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, through you to Ms. Moody. You do have county representatives, though, that sit on your board, do you not? Okay, so you have these conversations while they're at the board table?
Yeah.
Well, perfect, because I sit on the ICC committee, so I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Jennifer Lutz.
You have offered that.
Thank you.
I have.
And you've offered at those,
Yes.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, Jennifer reports back good stories about your library. Councillor Walsh.
Just a comment, not a question. Somebody asked percentage of, let's say, salaries to gross revenue. It's about 78%. I did a quick estimate here. It's
Thank you.
78% of the total budget goes to salaries. But having said that, questions always asked, how does the Sundry Library get a higher percentage? And I think Leslie can explain the per capita funding of that, and that might help.
Sure. As far as how the county funding works, so we are based on catchment areas, and so it is a per capita across the board. It's the same per capita for each library, I believe. Sundry Library has more county patrons assigned to them for whatever reason. So it's based on the boundaries, and that is maybe something that can be advocated for with the county, is kind of looking at which populations are part of what, or perhaps a different funding model as, you know, based on, I don't know what. You guys are smarter than me.
You're not done yet? Okay, one more, and we'll check over here.
Two more, maybe? Thank you.
I'll be here all day if you want me to. That's fine.
Thank you, and I appreciate the time. So the town's responsible for 75% of your operating, I have two questions, 75% of your operating budget. There are additional costs, though, that the town also contributes, I believe, to the library, right, in terms of either the building or the facilities upgrade.
Yeah.
And my last question is, if I read your chart right, it looked like your utility cost budget has actually gone down, if I'm reading that right. Can you share the secret as to
$1,000.
how and why that's going down when
I'm
carbon tax and
hoping that we're
everything is-
budgeting correctly. We based our budget based on historical figures, so we went back the last 5 years and did an average based on the last 5 years. Of course, the numbers are going up each year, but we were trying to be conservative and realistic, so that's where that is. Yeah.
Very good. Well, I was wondering the same question, so thanks for asking. Very good to see something that's in the neighborhood. Yes. Did you
And-
have, go ahead.
Sorry. I will say too, that we do look at our budget on a regular basis, and usually about halfway through the year, if there are things, anomalies, like let's say halfway through the year, we see our utilities and things like that are substantially higher than what we predicted, then we look at the overall budget and see where we can adjust and take out of other areas so that we can still come back with a balanced budget and not be over.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
We even have gone to, we were looking at our insurance, for example, and we're like, oh, there's got to be a better insurance rate we can get. Like, we go to these fine points, and no, there isn't. We're actually pretty lucky that we've got what we have. So,
Thank you for your added point. Well, is that your presentation then today?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. And I entertain a motion then. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the Olds Municipal Library Board proposed budget as information. And thank you, ladies, for your attendance.
Once again, your slide presentation was very informative. I'm going to keep it close to me. Also, we have 3 reps here for ICC, so We're always interested in the library. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz. I will call all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Yes? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Pursuant to the conversation we were having a few minutes ago and the direction I wanted to go in with the investigation into the library as a community center, I do have another motion I'd like to put on the floor, directing the CAO to investigate the opportunities that could be available if the library were also a community center.
Put that on the floor?
As I just read, that is the motion. I'll read it again. So direct the CAO to investigate the opportunities that could be available if the library were also a community center. I forgot, I don't know why I turned that off. Just a quick reason why I think this is important is there are, and I think Councillor Wilson brought it up earlier, there seems to be a reluctance when it comes to library funding through the province. They seem to be holding their ground where it is and not increasing it so much. However, there is an increased funding concept for community services, especially preventative cares. We see that with FCSS and the arguments through every convention we go to and the increased funding needs for those. So there's a lot of advocacy towards those type of programs. Director Moody also mentioned that they've been able to acquire funding through other community activities and other grants for other programming outside of the scope normally attributed to libraries. I think this is something to investigate in order to, because we talk about, well, let's get more money from the county, let's get more money from here, but we got to sometimes think about different avenues to ask the money for and to ask for money in different ways. I think this is one way that might work, it might not work, but we will never know unless we investigate it.
Comments? If not, there's a motion on the floor. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, moving now to page 18, please, of your agenda. Item 3B, Community Services Quarterly Report.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And to lead us through this report that he was not present for, our new Director of Community Services, Director Guy Lapointe. Guy, I'll help you out as required, but
Thank
that
you.
may not be a offer you want to accept. So.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Dahl and Council. This afternoon, I'm happy to share some of the Q3 highlights and upcoming year-end activities for the Community Services Division. Move fairly quickly so I can leave some time for questions at the end. FCSS was busy with events, including the annual Canada Day festivities and Roots of Empathy instructor training. For the balance of the year, FCSS will be reviewing grant applications, facilitating the old-fashioned Christmas, and completing engagement for the Men's Shed and Art Space initiative. Park staff spent the bulk of their hours on sports fields maintenance, shrub beds and trees, and health and safety related items. A baseball tournament was hosted, soccer field maintenance was completed, and the new Town of Olds entrance sign updated. I did want to point out a small error that indicates Rotary was the lead organization on the warming shack when it was actually Kiwanis, and Legislative Clerk McKinnon assures me this has been noted and will be reflected accurately in the minutes on a go-forward basis. The Aquatic Center usage was up significantly over the summer, as were the annual pass sales. In Q4, we can expect the completion of the main upgrades to the pool, some planned street pruning, and security camera installation at major facilities. Communications and engagement saw steady visitation and interaction via social media and the website. They also assisted with the Men's Shed Art Space concept development as well. The team will be finalizing the communication strategy, supporting the crisis communications plan, and initiating year-end communications. You may have questions on the operating budget slide, and previously this section reflected only the expense side of the equation. However, what you see now is the budgeted subsidy. I believe this provides a clear picture of how the division is performing, and I can answer questions about that afterwards if you'd like. Some strategic planning items of note. Select staff are collaborating to create some new revenue generation ideas for the facilities and sports fields. Parks naturalization planning is underway. Council will see the men's shed proposal shortly, I believe it's sometime in December here. And a new website design is on the horizon. And with that, I am open to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, and we'll start with Deputy Mayor.
First of all, welcome, Yi. Sorry for throwing you under the bus as I talk about the Sunshine Bus. On page 23 of the presentation, we have a slide that talks about the Sunshine Bus ridership. And I did a little bit of math myself here, and if I look at 2024, we would need to have 855 riders in the last quarter to match the year before's numbers, which I don't think is a realistic number to anticipate. Based on the numbers that we've seen over the past few years, which is shocking in a lot of ways because we hear from the community a lot from our community that publicly available transportation is a big issue, an important issue, so much so that we're actually spending $50,000 of grant money this year on doing a public transit study. I'm hoping, and I just want to see if this scope of this study would examine why what we are offering just doesn't seem to be getting any traction. These numbers, beyond even the last couple of years that we see in the presentation, are just not increasing as I would expect them to based on the amount of comments we receive from the community. So I just want to make sure that that is part of the presentation. I don't know if CAO Williams, if you know that grant application, that grant or study is even out there yet, what we're asking for them to do in that study. But I'm assuming that that's going to be part of the study.
What Council Cummings is referring to is the federal grant received for the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. We received $50,000. Short answer, no, we haven't developed a scope for that yet. Guy, do you have anything to add on how we may go forward with that, or for now? Well,
I think that's still a discussion on our side of things, yes.
Yeah.
I would like to respond to the usership, though, because I did notice this myself. And I do think that maybe there is a shortcoming in terms of the reporting at this point. We really don't know what the Q3 numbers were through 2023 at this point. We know what the year-end numbers were, and so the usage may have spiked for the last 3 months of the year last year. So, yes, it appears that we're trending below, but that is a consideration as well.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. My comment or question, I guess, is also with the Sunshine Bus, and I agree with Councillor Cummings with the numbers. I was surprised to see them down, considering we opened the bus usage up to more people in the community. You wouldn't have to be a senior, you could be able-bodied and use this, and so I would have thought this usage would have been increased rather than down so significantly. But maybe when we look at this transportation study, it could look at, communication strategy. Maybe we're not getting the word out to the community that this is available. I know that we did when we first passed the motion to allow it open to more ridership, but how often have we been out there saying that this is the case? And it could be that a lot of people in the community don't realize that they could use it and haven't been. So I'd like to see that being looked at, because obviously there's something going on that we're not privy to. And Councillor Cummings is right in the fact that we had a lot of people coming to us and saying they wanted to, some kind of transportation. Here we provide it, and it's still not being used. So there's something going on. There's got to be a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point, for sure. Any more on the Sunshine Bus? Go ahead, Councillor Blatz.
Well, one thing I think that we shall note here, to date, year total, there was 246 days in service and 189 in 2022. Now to date, we're only 167, so that's approximately the last quarter. I would think that could be indicating we could be utilizing it more often. But my question, more or less, I think would be through you, Mayor Dahl, to CAO Williams. Was the Sunshine Bus not down for a significant part of the year due to mechanical issues? Or it was down for some point in time, I do recall that.
It usually goes down a few times a year. I can't recall specifically. I thought only our ramp was down this year, but I'd have to get clarity on that.
Yeah, is it still Sunshine Bus? Okay, you go ahead, I have a question as well, but go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. If we can go to page 31 of this presentation and talk just for a moment on the Aquatic Center renovation project. This was a huge project, and it's unfortunately spanning more than, I think, the time that we anticipated it would cover in multiple years. I find it difficult sometimes to follow town financial obligations when it covers more than 1 year. Because of course we have to break everything down by year. And again, I'd have to ask for consensus in the group here to see if there's some appetite to see this project specifically from a project standpoint rather than a year-over-year standpoint. And for more than one reason. One, it's just when you have delays like we've had over the last couple of, the whole project, whether they be because of this, that, or the other thing, it doesn't matter. But there's added costs to those delays that we see on there, not just financial costs, but also in available usage time. The project is still not finished, as we see in the presentation today. So I would like to see a full project cost analysis that involves not just the financial part of it, where the money came from, where overruns were, where savings were made if that happened, as well as the downtime, both the downtime we initially planned for, downtime that may have happened since because of the delays and the other work in the roof and the windows and whatnot, so that we can get a better idea of the overall impact this project had on the community, financially as well as on the services side. It's something I believe in heavily when we have special projects like this outside of the normal operational costs or planned or corrective maintenance routines, that we have a better picture of the overall project costs. It's great when we have money coming to us from grants, but we also need to have a better picture, I think, of where actual town dollars are going to in these sorts of projects. So I'm not sure if my fellows here on council would agree to have a overall project analysis done. I don't even know how to say that, or what terms would be the proper terms to use or not. So I'm just throwing that out there now to see if we can get some sort of consensus from council to ask for that.
Personally, I don't agree with this being the proper venue for that. We're in budget right now, back and forth, and pardon me? That's true. I would like personally to have more background and information, but open it for other council. Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Donald. Well, I do understand the question from Councillor Cummings. I do believe that the CEO has provided us regular updates on what the delays were last year due to many, many issues. And he's also given us any opportunity and given us many more updates on when the pool has been down. And other than the initial shutdown for the actual renovation, the only other time it was down was due to our yearly annual maintenance, if I remember correctly. So I guess my question to CEO Williams is, I mean, could this type of information be provided in our next budget update, and how much administration time would it take to do such a request?
Depending what's being asked, because the windows, for example, aren't in yet, so the project technically is not finished. So I'm not sure the value of providing a project summary if it's not finished yet. Then obviously going to take a few more, at least a year from that project completion date to look at the intended outcome of that project, which is energy efficiency, for example, comparing our various kilowatt and gigajoule usages. With regards to shutdowns was the initial one that was delayed, but there's been cost overruns is the wrong term to use, because this was a tendered project, so what was costed out was paid, and that the contract still holds. So certainly not opposed to providing whatever project summary is required. It's just, I guess, the timing of that, since the project is not quite done yet. And then the outcomes, again, with the projected savings through energy efficiency, won't be known for quite some time yet.
Thank you. That was what I was looking to hear from Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think the CEO summed it up well for me. I wouldn't be looking to have a huge in-depth analysis of this project, the aquatics project, or any other project, but certainly kind of a learning from incident. You know, we talk about quality work and project management on whatever level that looks like and whatever project. So I would certainly look for that and a kind of a learning from the project, right, in terms of what went well, what didn't go well, so that we can either incorporate the things that went well for future projects and conversely learn from and improve going forward for those that didn't go as well. But yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, for me, it's did we meet our targets in terms of getting back up, and cost versus budget or actual versus budget.
Deputy Mayor?
Mary, just in closing, then I guess what I'm aware the project's not done. I don't want to wait till the project's done to ask for an end project report. I think that asking in advance of the project being done to have an end project report is more fiscally responsible of us as council to ask administration to do that, giving them some time to do that and prepare. I believe it should be something that's part and parcel to every large project, to have a project synopsis at the end of the day, at the end of that project, whether it's this project or the Yop Center project or any other upcoming project. The overall benefit of the project moving forward through operational cost reduction is a long-term analysis. It's not going to be done tomorrow. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is basically, this was the project, this is the scope of the project, this is what we anticipated, this is what happened in reality. Here's the differences, and like Councillor Wilson said, this is our lessons learned because of that project work before and after. I would not expect this report to be done until the project's done, whether that's while we're in council or the next group of councillors is in council. But it's something that I'd like to see developed as a policy with all capital projects of a certain dollar amount moving forward, that in that capital project analysis is always an end report, some sort of analysis of how the project worked for the town, what went right and what went wrong. So I think now is a good timely point to bring something like that up, to ask for council or administration to do that at the end of the project.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to upfront say I couldn't support it, but we can do a consensus around the table. This timing is not right, in my opinion, in my mind. But that's just me. So, do we have consensus for a motion on the floor for this? No, we don't. Okay, we'll have to move forward then. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'm going to go to page 38. This might be this is going to be an easy question because I don't know what taco is. Can anybody tell me what taco is? And going forward, and I've mentioned this on many occasions, can we have the spell out of the acronyms? I mean, we may know a lot of these, but in this case, I didn't know which this was. But certainly, anybody who's looking at the agenda or our packages won't, and the general public may not know. So please do a better job on that, I guess, is what I...
Always trying to do better, Councillor Ryan. So TACO is what the volunteer group who took over our arts committee, public art committee. It's theater and the Arts Collective Holds.
Yes.
Yes.
The Arts Collective Holds.
Yeah. So they reformed their name to get away from the public arts assumption that they were just murals, I guess, from back in the day. So.
Thank you very much, CEO Williams. Appreciate that.
Yes, and I'm sure our viewers are very appreciative of the question. My question now is, I haven't had a question yet, so I'm going to ask a question with regards to, on page 24, cemetery. I see that your niche sales are down. Is that because we're not at the end of the year yet? Okay, that's fair. As is your columbarium. But my one question is the scattering garden. What time of the year does that open, and will it still open in 2025?
C.A. Williams, do you have the answer to that one?
No, I do not have the answer to that one. We'll have to circle back.
The reason I'm asking is because there are people that have had cremations and are asking if we have anywhere that we can scatter them, and I know that we have a scatter garden, but
You can direct them to the cemetery liaison here at FCSS, so you don't have to answer those questions yourself.
oh, certainly I don't, but this
Yeah.
is my venue to ask questions, so
Yeah.
it was a good
Yeah, but if you
opportunity.
have questions from the public,
Sure.
they can phone the office and we can direct them.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. If we could just jot right down to page 42 in the operating budget for just a moment. I'm an accounting major. I have a hard time reading this. The negative numbers confuse me, and I'm an accounting person. I'm wondering if in the future we could have this set up in a way that it makes a little bit more sense to the average Joe, that the budgeted amount is just a dollar amount, the year-to-date is what we've spent, and the variance is what's left over. Positive or negative at that point. Because, like, I'm looking at FCSS budget line, I'm going to assume that there's a typographical error in there somewhere. Because I see that we're supposed to have spend $60,000, but we've somehow earned $21,000, and we have a variance of $81,000. So I'm assuming those numbers are wrong. Somewhere in there's some math that just isn't jiving. But we really need to start making these things for the public to consume. And these negative numbers are just difficult for the average Joe to understand, if not, like I said, I'm an accounting person. I have a hard time with negative numbers in a graph like this. That's just a comment. I do have one quick question, though, on elections. So earlier in the presentation, did talk about election communication. And I just have a quick question about this. And I know it's a multi-department thing, or must be a multi-department thing, election communication is going through Guy's department, but the election itself is being run by the Office of the CAO. That's what I understand. Is that, I got that right? Okay, thank you.
If I may respond to the operating budget as well, I certainly am willing to make changes as required. This was a last-minute change on my side of things, only because, as I said, the previous reporting had reflected only the expense side of the equation. And so again, if your revenue was trending low, but you were managing to your expenses, certainly the subsidy would be reflecting a very negative situation as well. And specifically about the FCSS situation, that is accurate. They have earned money this year at this point. And so some of that is reflective of grants that they've received, from what I understand, but that is actually accurate.
Yeah, and I just encourage council not to say, it doesn't jive, we're doing it wrong, this doesn't make sense. That is unhelpful, Councillor Cummings. Now, if I have to say it in a different manner to make myself more clear, I will. This is correct. I mean, we can present it in a better way, but please don't infer that we're, not doing things appropriately. Suggest it.
Deputy Mayor, closing?
My apologies for the error in my judgment and how those numbers appeared. It's very abnormal for us to actually earn money through FCSS, so the numbers, bear with me, my misunderstanding that would be an error. I did see a whole lot of nodding of heads when I said that out loud to everybody, so it's a understandable mistake, but I apologize for the way I presented it. I should have asked for clarification rather than jumping to the assumption that it was incorrect.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'd like to get a motion on the floor, please, to accept. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council accepts the community services quarterly report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Those in favor? That is carried. Please move to new business, page 44 of your agenda, and we will be discussing Mountain View Power Community Grant recommendations. And thank you, Director Lapointe. C.O. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Earlier this month, the Mountain View Power Community Grants Committee met following another robust intake for applications to the grant program funded by Mountain View Power. We did hope earlier this year to go forward with a second $75,000 grant funding as we did in the spring, but our prudential obligations kind of prevented that. So you'll see partly on Thursday kind of where MVP is trending for 2025, but we are still in good shape. Anyways, $50,000 was available. We had grants requested in the amount of $114,000 and change, and the committee is recommending the council to disperse $50,000 to 6 groups for the projects listed in the recommendation. There's a bit of color added to the RFD, as you can see, describing the projects that were chosen for recommendation. The 3 that were deemed non-eligible for various reasons. And yeah, I believe the grant applications, which go into greater detail, are also included in that RFD. Sorry, I made a mess here. There we are. So happy to take any questions, if there may be some.
Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to the CEO Williams. And my apologies also for saying that we weren't doing a very good job on the acronyms. However, going forward, I'm sure we'll get that cleared up. So my question would be, on these ones that, so we have a list here of, I think it's 9, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 9. And 3 of them didn't receive any funding. So of those 3 that didn't receive any funding, were they just not eligible, or we just didn't have enough money? And if they're not eligible, do we send a note back to them saying, you're not eligible and this is the reason why? Or do we send them a note back to them saying, we just didn't have enough sufficient funds, please feel free to reapply?
Oh, good question. So with the 3 that weren't eligible, for example, we're trying to hone this every period. So 2 things we noticed that we wanted to get away from, and some of it was based on the committee's recommendations and some based on conversations council had before. One thing is that they have to have permission from the landowner. In some cases, it's the town that they just haven't gotten permission to do the project. The bigger piece is that Mountain View Power, the committee, had a strong preference towards people who had skin in the game, so had some of their own funds to contribute. So we also been deeming ineligible those who don't have any of their own funds or any other funding going towards the project where they want Mountain View Power to be, 100%, or they haven't specified if they have the money, because the policy council passes, the intention is to have this money activated in the community as quick as possible. And the project turnaround time is about 12 months we're hoping for. So that's why the 3 deemed ineligible. When it comes to the 3 or so that weren't giving funding, because some were giving fewer funding than others, I believe it largely had to do with either the recency that they were giving funding. For example, the Football Association, that was, if you recall, council approved the recommendation to fund $30,000 for a U Matter space on the CLC grounds. They saw this as a bit too close to that, so they didn't want to double up too much at one time. And I believe that the Music Festival Society application, perhaps, it just wasn't a large enough impact. So just various things that the committee adjudicated, so.
Supplemental then. So do we follow up letters with?
Sorry, yeah, we do, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate
Totally.
that. I think it's good for these community groups to understand where they sit in the relationship to what the committee and what the policy says with regards to how they receive funding. And perhaps if they rejig their application, or it can be revisited at a different time.
Yeah, and that's the hope too, that if it doesn't get funded this year, but it's worthy, they can improve it and bring it back next time.
I really appreciate the comments of our CAO, and I can give you an example for, as a matter of fact, the Mountain View Special Riding Association and the Olds Minor Football Association subsequently did put applications in for the Rotary Club. Now, is that a result that they were unable to be successful here? And the story would continue on to these groups to continue looking for the venue that is still open, because there's always something open. So, well said, C.O. Williams. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just through you to the CEO. A question taking us a little bit into more of the weeds. If you don't know the answer, that's fine. If an applicant is successful, is there a wait period? Can you remind me, educate me? Is there a wait period before they can reapply again? Or with every intake, whether they're successful or not, they can submit applications?
Yep, good question. No, there's no time limit they have to wait, but it is in the grant funding criteria that if they receive funding, that will be a factor in the committee's decision-making process, the recency of the last time they were given funding. And it's obviously makes a lot of sense. You do want to make sure you're not focusing on one person, but a lot of, you can probably think of local clubs or local organizations, they're just busy, right? And they have a lot of good ideas. So we want to leave that flexibility should the committee deem fit or deem it so to recommend that to council.
Thank you. This is always so nice to see, because there are many groups in town that do, and they all do like to have some background and knowledge if the same person is getting accepted at each venue. But, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a two-part question really here about the process Councillor Wilson started talking about here. Overall now, since we've created the Mountain View Power Community Grant Program, how many intakes is this now? 3 or 4, right? This is the 4th intake? Okay, the second part of my question is, do you think it'd be worthwhile at some point to review how things have gone? And maybe review the policy that we have in our grant policy to incorporate some of the great ideas the committee's had on the process of the grant applications for Mountain View Power. Just an idea that, because a lot of lessons have been learned, just your conversations that we've had here in chambers about the process and the recommendations, to maybe codify it a little bit better as we should with everything. That's a document we're finally acting on it, right? So at what point would you think is a good time to start thinking of doing that?
Good question. I think the policy as it stands right now is written fairly broadly, that puts most of the details into the grant guidelines, which administration updates mainly on the committee's kind of recommendations and what we see as kinks in the process. So I would be okay with waiting the 2 years or whatever until that policy is naturally reviewed by council's cycle. Unless council sees, I think, Councillor Cummings, you mentioned before, perhaps the committee empowerment idea, if we didn't want to have council that rubber stamping authority, like a change like that, it should be brought back to council. I can't see anything right now that would need to be changed, that couldn't be adjusted in the guidelines, though. It's going to be interesting to see, should Mountain View Power gain traction, continue to grow, if how we can better utilize that, and if by the grace of something higher than myself can make it grow to the 3-4 times we can. If this is the best route to utilize that funding, or if we have another community focus. I think that would be a conversation related, but maybe not. Anyways, long answer, longer. I think it's working well right now, fine-tuning it as it works, but should council want something different, that would be time to bring the policy back. Or if you're hearing something different too from the community.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. It's like I said, if we did 4 intakes, it's been 2 years since the policy to bring on Mountain View Power has come about. And I think we do this every 4 years, right? Policy review. So next council taking a look at it would be great. Either way, I just think you're the one on the front line seeing the changes necessary, going through the procedural side of things. You say is great. I don't think we need to adjust the policy until it's time to do the policy. I just wanted your input on that. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further questions? Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. It's not necessarily a question, but maybe a suggestion to CEO Williams, and that is on the key messages at the bottom of page 46. Could we also include a running total of how much money has been given out to date? I think it's really good information for the community to know how much money is actually going right back into the community and how valuable it is to be a member of Mountain View Power. I think that the more communication we can do and get the word out, perhaps it will generate more people into joining Mountain View Power, or as opposed to other companies that are out there, simply because this money goes back and stays in the community, and that's a rarity. So, thank you.
Yeah, a very good point, yeah, and I will certainly do that, as it's something we should be doing already. I believe with this intake, and if assuming council approves this distribution, that'll put us around just over $250,000 back into the community, so not a small chunk of change.
Excellent. Well done. Deputy Mayor?
Councillor Ryan triggered a thought, and I love thoughts being triggered spontaneously because it sounds weird. Is it possible for us to make that information available on the Mountain View Power bills, digital or paper, so that the customers themselves can see on their regular bill that this much money or this much percentage of their fees that are going to the town, some sort of way for them to see that they're paying for these efforts or something like that in a physical way? Because having the information is great, presenting it here to our wide and vast audience is one thing, but actually presenting it to the bill so the consumers who are the people funding this program can see where their money's going specifically. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I know we've sent out independent blasts to the subscribers. Mountain View Power is 99% e-billing, and it's done through our partner UtilityNet, the retailer who we purchase from. But I would have to check on that, but same thing. If we can make that just a recurring thing monthly, then maybe in the 12 months of bills, one person might read it on the month. So, but yeah, no, good point, well taken.
Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Blatz.
Yeah, thinking just to build on to that, CEO Williams, perhaps we can even, in the advertising that we do for Mountain View Power, we can actually, or even in putting it in the key messages, list all the groups that have already received the funding, and show how many groups have already, have gotten value out of the fact that people have belonged to Mountain View Power. I think it would be a really good idea.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through you to CEO Williams. Maybe to go one step further too, and perhaps at the bottom of maybe on occasion our water or utility bills that are still paper bills, or in our newsletter, or even perhaps on our tax notices, to add that little blurb that this is the amount of power or amount of money that Mountain View Power has generated back into the community. Might be a broad scope that we have control over, that we could perhaps do some advertising. I don't know if that's possible or if that would make things confusing, but it might be an avenue we could take.
And one final thing on that too, it's something we don't want to say struggle with. We're always challenged with how to get the message out there in the same manner. Let's say Direct Energy or an EPCOR gets their message out there, because these bigger firms, and you might have seen parallels with trying to compete with bigger firms in other parts of our former business life, but they'll offer like a 7% per kilowatt hour incentive for, whatever it might be, 3 months. And then it comes back up to the rate, which generally speaking, all of us sell power and gas for the same rate. It's just the hidden costs, which Mountain View Power is very competitive, if not better than the Direct Energies of the world. They just market themselves better. They don't necessarily say what their administrative fees are, but they can advertise a kilowatt hour at a lower rate. But when you look at your power bill monthly, 80% of it is not based on your consumption. It's based on those, largely the generator distribution or transmitting fees, and then the administrative fees. And we're much lower than the major retailers who have call centers in Dallas and India as opposed to Calgary and the CCC with poor Gary down there. So, but yeah, a good point. We're always trying to find a way to market ourselves better because it is a product that makes financial sense and community sense, no where you put it at.
Would be the Community Connection Center. Thank you for sharing that. If there's no further questions, I'd ask for a motion. If you don't want to read each line, you can just state as follows. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council approves the Mountain View Community Grant Committee's recommendations as presented in the request for decision to the 6 recipients identified.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item of business will be page 90, please, of your agenda, item 4B. This is Municipal Affairs Status Amendment Act. And you'll note that we have some added information that Marcy, our legislative clerk, has given us to follow with. Thank you. C.O. Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Dahl. Marcy did the bulk of the work on this report, and although Council is well aware now of Bill 20 and the changes to the MGA and the LAEA, governance and elections respectively, I think it's decent to summarize those, certainly for the public, and let Council ask questions, as I know some of your discussions recently have focused on that. So Marcy's going to lead us through it, and I'll fill in as necessary. Marcy, please, take us away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to provide a very brief overview on the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act. The act, with, oh yeah, thank you. With the Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act 2024, the provincial government aims to support municipalities in speeding up housing development, enhancing provincial oversight, and modernizing regulations for elections and elected officials. And after reviewing my presentation, I'm definitely election focused, so apologies in advance. The act came into force on October 31st. And most of the provisions are active now, with some of the assessment and property tax matters coming into effect on January 1st, 2025. Here I've listed some of the Municipal Government Act changes, and I won't read them all. I will say that I'll put this PowerPoint with the minutes, so they'll be available for everyone to read. These are just a few more. I don't feel that the town of Olds has historically had a lot of issues with governance. Some of these things speak to governance, and I don't feel that we've had any issues with them. So keep up the good work, Council. I do feel that some of the changes that are going to affect us the most are these 4 listed. Mandatory council orientation training, conflict of interest provisions, accelerated housing incentives, digital options for public hearings, and I don't feel that any of them are affecting us in a negative way, just more resources would be required. With your orientation for council, that would happen both before and after the swearing in at the next election. With the conflict of interest, I'm not sure if this is going to affect us because we haven't really faced quorum issues. Now that you have a little bit more flexibility, will that become an option or an issue? I'm not sure. There's some accelerated housing initiatives that I think we're already implementing, and C.A.O. Williams can touch on that more. And the digital options for public hearings on planning and development, I don't think we'll have any issues meeting any of these because we already stream. Now we'll just add in a participation level, and it should make it relatively smooth. Certainly.
I'll just touch on the housing side quickly, because right now Council has a policy for residential incentive, and you have a bylaw for non-residential incentive. The difference is that the bylaw for non-res, that's part of the MGA right now. That it grants Council that authority by bylaw to offer non-residential incentives. Nothing existed like that for residential, hence the policies crafted where even though it says this is the incentive, everything comes back to council, whereas for final approval, whereas the bylaw administration's granted that authority to work under council's bylaw. As far as I can understand, the changes activated January 1st, it will follow much like the current non-res incentives. So in the new year, I will bring back the current policy for residential incentives council has and see the appetite council has. And that is in part and parcel to the housing strategy I've mentioned at various iterations. We're trying to put our needs, update our needs assessment and get together kind of a housing strategy of, what kind of housing do we want to encourage versus what we need and other things like that. So that will come in the new year. Sorry, go ahead, Marcy. Elections.
Thank you. Now here's my favorite topic. The changes on the Local Authorities Election Act have been gently summarized here. I've highlighted one here and one on the next page, or two on the next page, as I feel these are going to be a couple of the items that will definitely affect us. And again, these would be the four, I guess, that definitely affect us the most. Our permanent electors registry, aligning that information with Elections Alberta is going to be a big drain, I think, on resources, staff resources, because we're going to be the ones going back and forth with them. Once we start sharing information, I feel that this is going to be, I'm not sure how the people will take it because it's going to be different. They've never had to register and we've never used lists for over 25 years in the town of Olds, so it's going to be a new process for everyone. I feel that it will increase costs because we now need to promote it and advertise it and try to get as many registered voters registering with Elections Alberta so that there's less time potentially registering them at the vote. And in providing that information back to Elections Alberta, the information that they are requiring, standard information, tombstone data, address, phone number, but now they want latitude and longitude. They also want the EMS address and the residential indicator to fill the provincial registries for their elections. So they've sort of passed that along to us. Again, that's mostly going to be on staff, not for citizens. Regarding the prohibiting automated voting equipment, it's definitely more resources required because we have to count the votes. As for costs, I would say I'm shifting costs from buying machines to paying people to count the votes. I feel like it will probably balance out pretty equal. Sorry, just checking my notes. And I also feel that there could be more human errors when it comes to counting as well, as some of us may be tired. We'll have to have a second shift to count, again, more costs, and longer wait times for the results. You'll be getting my text at 1 or 2 in the morning instead of 9:30 or 10:30. Recounts have always been physically hand counted, so that doesn't change. It's just the variable on how and when we'll do a recount and how it's requested has been slightly affected or changed. And then the candidate registry. I've always put a registry online, so now they're just saying we have to do it, so we were ahead of the bus on that one. So that was a good point there, I guess. Some of the positive points I've listed here. I think some of the act is looking to modernize municipal governance, improve electoral fairness, and strengthen public trust. And I've sort of touched on some of these already regarding costs and considerations. In doing my cost analysis, I think we budgeted the 2021 around 30,000 and came in at about 25, and that was during a global pandemic. We used staff only, and we had tabulators, so it was easy. And then looking forward to this one, we're estimating at about 40,000, and that's mostly, I think, a lot of inflation, just as well as I've increased
the pay for workers because we need them, and we're competing against every other municipality, as well as we're competing against a federal election at the same time next year. It's either going to be on the 20th or the 27th, and everybody needs people. So resources will become challenging, and that's why I hope to pay them well, so they'll stick with us. I think we've already been doing work on some of this already, which is staff resources already helping to get some of this stuff in line. And I think Brent would be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a couple of quick questions here. So, you talked about paying staff to come in and do all the work. Are we allowed to use volunteers for counting and things like that, or is there a restriction on volunteers? We have to use paid staff?
If you can find me volunteers that will work for free, sure.
Thanks. I know that the voting, counting, tabulating machines are prohibited. And I know that there's a lot of discussion at AB Munis and RMA that that's maybe not a good idea and that we should be using them. And I'm wondering if we're not allowed to use the tabulating machines to produce the official count of the ballots, how burdensome would it be to use both methodologies right now in this next election so that we can provide some real live comparative data to Elections Alberta and the UCP government and say, you wanted us to do this and this is the reality of the difference between the two setups. I know it's completely irrelevant to us running an election, but might be more beneficial for us in the long run of future elections where we can support our argument that it's a bad decision with some actual data.
So we would add 15,000 more to the budget to get those tabulators then? And probably about 10, maybe 12 to get the tabulators to count them. Is that what you're getting at? Sorry.
So I was under the impression we own tabulators. So we lease tabulators every election? Okay, well I did not know that. Now I do. And that cost would be prohibitive. I don't know if that cost would be accepted by council to provide that sort of data as an argument or counter argument to the current government's use or ideas around these voting machines. I know BC's successes and failures in their first year of tabulators can present some sort of argument, but I didn't realize we had to buy the machine or rent the machine separately.
Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through either our legislative clerk or CO Williams, but are we even allowed to order tabulators? I don't believe that we can even have them, can we?
We're prohibited from using them, is what the act says.
That's what I thought, so we wouldn't even be able to get them into town.
We wouldn't be allowed to use them for the official count. So we could hand count them, then throw them into the tabulator and say, oh, look at that, they're identical. Or look at that, there's a 0.001% variance. Why are we not using the tabulators? We could also say this is how many hours it took to do the hand counting, and this is how many minutes it took to use the tabulators. So there's some reality to the number crunching.
Legislative Clerk, Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Blatz.
After we're done counting this election, Councillor Cummings, I can probably tell you that already because historically I was at home by 11:45 in the last election. And the numbers were out and filed with Municipal Affairs.
The results were out with somebody at your door like an hour after. You done already? At my door, my scrutineer. Who was next? Councillor Blatz and then Councillor Ryan.
Mine was just supplemental, and I understand that, what Councillor Cummings has said. I'm just saying that I don't even think that they will allow us to even bring them into the municipality, will they? The tabulators?
I doubt they'll be checking for that. It's just probably not worth the cost or the optics to do battle with the province. This wasn't a decision based on logic. This was based on whatever the Premier's party told her was the problem. So you can't really logic your way around politics, I don't think, so. That's a good.
I just thought they came right from the province, that's why.
No, we order them from Dominion
Oh,
generally,
okay.
which got
All right,
its
so that I
fame
was
during the
not
last
aware,
election,
yeah.
so yeah.
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 So Ryan and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. I do have concern about this registry, and it probably would actually take more people to do that than it would be to actually do the counting. Even though you're going to have a lot of people needing to do counting, this registry seems to be very, personnel heavy. Like, do you have any idea of how long it's going to take you to actually put this together? And are we looking at the community to try to provide that information, or are we going to have to go knocking door to door?
Thank you. So you're exactly right, Councillor Ryan. They're going to, so Elections Alberta is going to give us the information they already have in their system from when citizens registered for the provincial vote. We're also, where I say, supposed to encourage citizens to go online to the Elections Alberta and register and make sure you're good to go with that. Every month, starting in May, they'll give us what they're calling a dump once a month. So May, June, the beginning of every month, we'll get a list. And then through that month, we're supposed to take that list and fill in all the blanks that are missing if we can, through that spatial data that I've described, and then send that list back. And every month, hopefully up until the election, we fill it in as much as we can, so that when you come into the election and maybe you didn't register, you're still eligible to vote. You just have to fill in a Form 13. That Form 13, which is the electors register, which is what it's called, is then taken, and we'll have to take that information and put it into that spreadsheet and send it back to them after the election. And we have till March 1st, so 120 days to send that back to them, fully completed. You do not actually have to register to be on the list, but your name's going on there when you're done anyways. No, regardless of whether you choose to or not, it's mandated in the act that we will take all the information from the Form 13 and enter it back into their spreadsheets.
Supplemental, thank you, Mayor Dahl. So it sounds to me like having this Form 13, if a lot of people didn't register ahead of time, that could really slow things down too for you, isn't it?
The Form 13 is the same Form 13 is standard. You filled it in last election. It literally has your tombstone, your address verified by your driver's license that you give us. We fill in the bottom saying that we've given you the ballot and those kind of things. And so that information that's on the bottom of the Form 13 now almost has to be transposed over to the spreadsheet as well, because I have to list on that spreadsheet what ballots I gave you. So there's a lot of resources on the town that will be filling in that, definitely. As for time, I don't know, I joke that I might hire an election worker assistant for after the election just to do all the data entry, but we'll see where we get to. We don't know what that looks like.
Okay, was yours supplemental, Councillor Blatz? Because Councillor Wilson. Okay, Councillor Wilson, Councillor
No,
Blatz.
my question was similar to Councillor Ryan's and has been asked and answered, so I'm good, thank you.
No, thank you. Mine's been asked and answered. I think my only comment would be that, I mean, we're already getting resistance from people who are somewhat skeptical to share personal information. I would imagine this would make it even somewhat more challenging.
Thank you very much. Was there any further comments? Were you okay, C.L. Williams? Okay, Legislative Clerk Marcy, thank you very much for wrapping that up and the information sharing you gave us. May I have a motion, please, on the floor? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council accepts the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act overview as presented.
Thank you, and once again, thanks for your time. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Page 91, please, of your agenda, correspondence, item 5A. Can we get a motion on the floor, please? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that the correspondence and information report ending November 25th, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Are there any questions from council with the A, B, or C correspondence? Seeing none then, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. We're moving right down to page 99 now in your agenda, item 6A, council reports. The agenda has received my report, Councillor Daly report, Councillor Ryan, and Councillor Wilson. I will now ask for Councillor Cummings, Councillor Walsh, and Councillor Blatz. So let's start on this side.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a couple of unique events. No Stone Left Alone on November the 1st. This is a remembrance event held at the cemetery in conjunction with the Independent Order of the Daughters of the Empire, IODE, and the Legion, where school children from our 2 public schools attended and placed memorial markers on the recognized war gravestones in our cemetery. So it was a good event. I filled in for yourself there for that event, as well as the Kiwanis President's Dinner, another great event held in support of our Kiwanis organization. The 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I was in Edmonton for our rural municipalities of Alberta, apologies, a convention, as well as a elected officials education program course on the 4th. Lots of great comments and opportunities to attend several speaking engagements there. Lots of networking sort of things. Other than that, though, there wasn't a lot going on in the month of November. The one other event that I belong to, of course, is the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group. We did have our meeting this month as well. The organization is going through a structural change or a strategic planning change. We've been focused so heavily on getting the province to buy into the Ardley Dam project, which they have. And they're spending $5 million on doing a study on that. And so we're reinventing ourselves and how we can help with that study, as well as move forward with other activities in education, training, and watershed insights. So hopefully we'll have some more about that coming up next year and years to follow. Other than that, it's been a very hectic and busy month with all of our regular meetings.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. September, yeah, I also attended AB Munis, September 25th to the 27th. October, I did attend this Elks 100th anniversary as Deputy Mayor. It was a very informative and a fun event. It was well put on and a great meal. Learned a lot. Not knowing the Elks, it's 100 years of history is presented, and it was interesting to say the least. Attended all the regular council meetings, library board, EDAC, regular board meetings, plus I've been attending a few of the Brood business retention and expansion and work development programs. As the leadership, I'm an alternate, so when Dan's not there, I'm there, and the Brood activities that were put on in just recently, last week. So that's been taking up a fair bit of time. Other than that, attended the PRLS board on the 14th and budget meetings this morning. So that's up to date as I can be.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you. Apologies for not having mine included in this agenda. I, too, attended most of the normal regular meetings, and I did do a couple of unique things, though, over the past month. I did go to the Remembrance Day ceremony at the Deer Meadow School, as I was invited, and it was quite an interesting and a very nice event, and good to see the young students that are participating in that. I, of course, went to the Water Commission meetings. We have passed the budget, and that will be forthcoming information. And I also went into the FCSS poverty simulation event, and that was quite an eye-opening experience in the role-playing as to how poverty does affect and challenges to many, many families in today's society. So thank you for that, and that's all I have to report.
Very much. Yes, Counselor Wilson.
Mayor Dahl, thank you. If I may, I just add two brief comments to my report, which was attached. And I attended the Enhanced Energy Open House in early November, and I just plant the seed, not necessarily a motion, but they do have a community affairs contact, and she mentioned that they're very open to applications and submissions from communities in central Alberta as far as funding goes for their social and community investment programs. So I just mentioned that as for anybody that's watching or our minutes, and for administration, if we feel so inclined, might be an opportunity there to tap into some funds for community and social investment. And I also attended the Chinook Arch Victim Services farewell or thank you dinner, and which was a great event. You really got an appreciation for the big shoes that are going to be filled. And to that end, Staff Sergeant Wright and I chatted a little bit about the new model, and at some point in time having the new person, who I think is based out of Airdrie, come in and talk to council as part of that new model and what that transition's looking at. So, thank you.
For that. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your reports, and I'd entertain a motion, please. Counselor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the reports from council, boards, committees, and commissions ending November 25th, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Yes, that was a long period of time, actually, wasn't it, from October till November? Okay, we're moving now down to page 120 of the agenda, item 7A, and this is our Chief Administrative Officer report. C.O. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I didn't have too much to add outside of the action item list in the report. I do understand there's some letters to write from the meeting I missed due to some holidays. The only verbal update was kind of the conclusion of the engagement piece of the Olds College's strategic plan engagement, which the consultant, as you met at EggSmart, met with administration from the town several months back, where we discussed, areas we'd like to see further partnership on housing, transportation, recreation, to that nature. Last week they came back to Olds, and the town helped facilitate meetings between the local service clubs, the Chamber of Commerce, and Uptown Olds as well, and trying to make some final connections with other groups as well. So thank you to those consultants and to Olds College for really making an effort to include the community in its upcoming 2025 to 2030 strategic plan. And that's all I had for my report. Happy to take any questions, however brief that was, on those matters or other ones.
Thank you. Your information sharing report was also attached. Does council have any further questions for our CAO? Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And I just have a question that probably could have done it through the committee, but since you're doing the CAO report, I noticed in one of the reports here from the PAP committee that you were going to be facilitating a meeting with regards to talking about a psychiatrist. I'm just wondering if that got, how that went, and if that got done, or what's going on with that. If you could speak to it.
I missed that in that report, but it's nice to be named. Yeah, I'm not sure how much is public yet, but Recovery Alberta, which is the new ministry, addictions and mental health, was moved into out of AHS. They have found a psychiatrist for Olds to be based in Olds. I'm not sure if it is full-time like we were hoping, but yeah, I have had initial introductions with the Recovery Alberta lead for Central Alberta, and I'm due to facilitate an introductory meeting to local clinics and the Attraction and Retention Committee, as well to some other key staff in the area. So still waiting on that connection, but it was something that, we worked on for the last few months, and if it comes to fruition, because I haven't actually met the person yet, kudos to Recovery Alberta for looking at the mental health needs of the community and making it work. So, yeah.
Excellent. They've been working hard on that for sure. If there's no further questions, I'd like a motion, please, to accept. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted for information.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote, please. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. We will be moving into a closed session of our agenda. When council goes into a closed session for continued participation in the virtual council meeting, stay online in the live streaming meeting platform, and the meeting stream will be replaced with graphic. When the graphics are removed, that will indicate the meeting is ready to reconvene. I will look for a motion, please, to move into a closed session. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council move into a closed session at 2:45 PM. Item 1, FOIP Section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party. FOIP Section 21, disclosure harmful to intergovernment relations related to development, with all those in the room attending.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for your patience and welcome back, everyone. We have reconvened back to our regular meeting, and now we will rise and report. And we will start with FOIP Section 16. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council direct our CEO to advertise as per Section 70 of the MGA regarding the transfer of town property located at 4818 51st Street, Olds, Alberta.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And FOIP Section 21, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council accept the intergovernmental relations report for information.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you to all our viewers today and staff. I now adjourn the meeting at 3:13 p.m.